Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got Josh Yohe with The Athletic and comedian Joe Bartnick alongside. And gentlemen, this homestand for the Penguins did not go well. And then we were talking about that last week. And then the Kraken game happens, and there's a lot more that happened this week. But I just want to kick it off with Tristan Jarry let in 3 goals on 17 shots against the Kraken. And apparently that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And Josh, I'll throw it to you. Do you have any insight into what went down? Because that was the straw that appeared to break the camel's back, and I think they were done with him and put him on waivers.
Well, Corey, I would say it was the entire homestand, and from what I have been told, it was actually the Columbus game that started the homestand that really soured a lot of people in the organization, maybe once and for all on Jarry. I will take you all the way back almost 2 weeks ago now. The Penguins are up 3-1 against Columbus in the third period. They had been playing pretty well. They would have been in a playoff spot had they held on and won that game. Tristan Jarry goes behind the net. He turns the puck over. A couple of seconds later, the puck's in his net. The Penguins end up losing that game 4-3 in a shootout. I really think that was the game that did it. And they decided to give him the rest of the homestand. And what did he do? Well, we know what he did. 2 games in a row, if I'm not mistaken. He faced 17 shots, gave up 3 goals against Tampa and then Seattle. 2 games the Penguins utterly dominated to get 0 points out of those 2 games. I just think that was it. He is now in Wilkes-Barre, and I would be surprised if we ever see him in a Penguins uniform again at the NHL level. I'm not saying it isn't possible. Of course it's possible, but it certainly looks that way to me. I just think they're done with him, Joe.
Josh, first of all, I went to Stick Tap. I thought your wrap-up article on hopefully Jarry's career in Pittsburgh was awesome. Obviously, everyone watching and listening to this knows you're the best writer in town, but what a great article. And something I didn't really need to relive. Sorry. You painted a very crisp, brilliant picture of everything that we went through. Yeah, I mean, if there's one reason why we're probably not going to make the playoffs, it is Tristan Jarry, and it finally had to come to an end. I didn't need to see him again after he went down the first time. I thought he should have been gone. Just a pitiful performance his last 4 or 5 games in town. I don't know. And then no fire, just everything about it just stunk. And I think that's I think that was kind of the end for a lot of things because of him. It just how pucks just went through him. It was like a glitch in a video game, Corey.
Yeah.
I mean, the puck looks like it's going to hit him and it goes through him.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. I mean, like the one, what was the game-winning goal that he gave up to the Kraken? It was just a goal that should never, ever be given up. And I was curious, Josh, I don't know how much you know about it, but was Sullivan, when was Sullivan done with him? And was this more a Dubas just hanging on, trying to be like, maybe we can squeeze something out of him? Because I imagine Sully was, it looked like he was about to explode every time on the bench after he gave him.
Sullivan very seldom calls out people individually when he's speaking with the media. He's really good about that. He doesn't like to be negative, especially with goaltenders. Even if a goaltender has a rotten game, he'll say, well, we got to play better defensively, and it's a team game, all the typical coach speak. If you go back and look at what he said after the Columbus game, his tone was entirely different. He basically said Tristan needs to be better, and, I forget word for word what he said, but you could tell at that point his tone really changed. My sense, from what I've been told, is that after they sent him down to Wilkes-Barre in October, he came back up mid-November. They wanted to give him an extended period of time to right himself, to decide once and for all what they thought about him. They saw a little bit of progress. There were games, even though they lost in a shootout, I think it was, in Florida. First game, January 3rd, I think it was. He played really well against the defending champs, and you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, maybe he's putting it together a little bit, and then just a disastrous homestand. He could not have been any worse in that homestand, and I really think that was what did it. They wanted to be patient with him. They've obviously made quite a financial investment in him. But like I wrote in my article, the guy's going to be 30 years old in April. Like, we know what he is at this point. He's not some kid. And I actually did the math. he has been in the Penguins organization longer than Tom Barrasso was, for Christ's sake. Like this isn't some prospect. And that's when we hear about him and when people talk about him, it's always like, well, we're waiting for him to put it all together. And he's got a lot of talent and he's coming around. Like, he's been in the organization 12 years. He's not going to, he might get better somewhere else in a change of scenery. I guess that's possible. He's not going to get better here at this point. And all trust has been completely lost in him. And it's just, of all the mistakes Dubas made when he took over at first, this might be the single biggest one of all.
Josh, that was the point I was just about to make, that, now that Graves, is playing okay, let's be fair. He's
right.
He hasn't been a detriment for the most part, although he does sometimes just look like he doesn't know how to skate. This is probably the biggest derelict of duty of Kyle Dubas, is the goaltending, because I always thought it was the worst case scenario from, I think, the last 3 GMs that we never had a backup goaltender. I mean, I don't know if you saw my favorite midget last night or 2 nights ago in Dallas. The Avalanche were just licking their lips. It was like my dogs when you open up the chicken bowl. Like, oh my god, they saw the Smith. They just throwing the puck right over his head like everybody else. But just not. I always thought not having a backup goaltender was a crime, but they just came into this year not having a starting goaltender. And for a team that needed a good goaltender, it wasn't like we're going to win games. We didn't think we were going to outscore teams. It ends up we have a little more offense than usual. But for a team that has no defense, we needed better goaltending, and they just didn't seem to prioritize that, or thought what they had was good. And I think that might be Dubas's biggest mistake. And just one more thing about Jarry, his uncompetitiveness on shootouts was like, I think I could have done better just by diving in one direction, soccer style.
Well, yeah, and that's when we look at Jarry. To me, he's just I hate to say this, it sounds personal. He's like a mentally weak goaltender. Like, he just is. Like, it's so in his head at this point. And the bigger the moment is in the game, the more he struggles. Look at how he plays in shootouts and in overtime. Look at his body language when you're in the third period and it's a 1-score game. He looks terrified. Like there's no confidence at all. And this goes back many, many years. I don't know if it goes back to the Islanders game 5, the turnover and double overtime. Maybe that was the turning point. Because, I say when you just isolate on a game and the biggest parts of the game, he never comes through. Well, you can do that when you look at the entire season as well. Historically, he's pretty good in October and November. When the second half of the season comes, his goals against average goes up. I think it's like 0.6 or 0.7 goals per game in the second half. That's extraordinary, because usually scoring around the league goes down a little bit in the second half of the season. Fewer penalties are called. Teams tighten up defensively. So you expect a goaltender's numbers to get better in that kind of environment. His literally get worse every single season. I've never covered anyone quite like him, just the mental lapses he would have during games, that even though he handles the puck well, the turnovers at the wrong times, he is just crying to have a change of scenery at this point. But I don't know how it's going to happen. What team's going to want him in a trade now? I just don't see it. So I don't know if the Penguins end up buying him out or what the situation will be. But I don't know that you can bring him back to training camp in September. That's going to be a little awkward for everybody.
What really stunk about the homestand, and Jarry in particular, was they really had cut down on the breakaways and the 2-on-1s and the 3-on-2s. And he just gave up the most basic, hey, guys in the slot, he's kind of covered. Just let it hit off your chest protector and suck it in and get a face off. He let all those goals in.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think when you look at the homestand, okay, they had the one game against Ottawa, which was a strange game, just got out of hand. Okay. But otherwise, they played well. Like, they outplayed Edmonton to beat the Oilers. They outplayed Columbus that night. They badly outplayed Tampa and Seattle. So they really played well in 4 out of those 5 games, and they end up going 1-3-1 in the homestand. So if you're wondering why Jarry's not around anymore, even though Ned had one bad game in that stretch as well, that's why he's not around. You're absolutely right. And even the 2-on-1 goal against Seattle, I forget who scored the goal. There's a 2-on-1 coming down the right wing, and just shot it right into him. And like anybody says, well, it's an odd man rush. No, there are bad goals sometimes that are odd man rush goals, and then that was absolutely one of them. You can't give up that goal in that situation when the Penguins outshot them 16-2 in the first period and is tied at 1 at the end of the first period. Like we've seen that so often this season. So he's a mess. He's a broken goaltender, and like I said, he's going to be 30 in April. And he doesn't look quite as athletic as he once did to me either. I don't know if there's a health issue. Dubas and Sullivan say he's healthy. I'll trust them, but he's just not the guy. We've known for a long time, Joe. He's not the guy.
No, but other than Ned's Shohei Ohtani performance on doing everything, selling popcorn, Ned hasn't been that good either.
No.
So, I mean, it's just been, they just needed to get a goaltender, and they just didn't.
Yeah. If this team has any hope of making the playoffs, which I think, to go on a positive note, I saw the statistic. I'm sure it has changed a little bit based on, games, but it's been a few games since they've played but they have one of the easiest schedules remaining. So, they can sneak into a playoff spot. And I think, I don't know Sully, so it just appears to me that the way he coaches them and the way he wants to, it kills them. I think he knows that they can make the playoffs. You just can't have a guy like that. It's just kill you.
Well, I've seen, I thought they played good against Tampa Bay, which we all know is a good team. Seattle stinks. I'm sorry. I love Ronnie Francis.
Terrible team.
Yeah, like they're terrible. I don't think they played better than they should have won the games on the homestand, but it wasn't like they played, Tampa Bay, Florida, and the Boston Bruins. Not that the Bruins are sliced bread, but you know what I mean. I don't know. I think the Penguins are a one-line team, and I'm going to say this, and it breaks my heart. I see bad Gino creeping in right now as well, and doesn't have his legs, Gino. Not back checking Gino, mental error Gino, bad penalty Gino, trying too much Gino, trying to go 1-on-3 Gino. I don't know if you noticed that, Josh. It's a little bit to me.
Yeah, certainly in Buffalo, he took a couple of penalties. The high sticking penalty was not a good one. That's fair. And as for the playoffs, Corey, sure that the East is so bad, they're still alive. And their schedule, even on this Western trip, it's a 7-game road trip, but they're already 1-1 on the trip. And other than LA, who they play tonight, there's not a good team on this trip. You got Anaheim, Seattle, San Jose, and Utah. Those are winnable games for sure. But the Penguins have really fallen back in the standings. What has happened is all of these crap teams around them in the middle of the East have suddenly gotten a little hot. And the Penguins are 6 games out of a playoff spot now. The odds of them making the playoffs are not good. It would almost shock me at this point if they did. I think it's too big of a hill to climb. I don't like Gino's game, and honestly, Sid's not playing great right now either. He's had a couple of surges this season where he looked like Sid, right? Right before Christmas, he went on that binge of the 4-point games. He's been pretty quiet since then too, and if he's going to be quiet, they have no chance because there's just too many forwards that don't score on this team.
Well, in getting back to the easy schedule, the Duckies got talent, and if any team always chalks up the excuse of we got goalied, Don Stowe will do that to you.
Yes.
So I hope we get Gibby. No offense, Gibby. Because I don't want to play Don Stowe. And then the Sharks have a kid named Macklin Salabrini, who might feel like putting on a clinic against 2 Hall of Famers. Seattle stinks, but then Utah with Cooley, and they got a bunch of guys that can score.
They're not bad.
So, they got to get guys that can score. So I think, the whole thing of throwing pizzas and not getting back and having people in the slot and someone chasing someone behind the net, Utah and San Jose and Anaheim can kill you like that. Seattle won't. Seattle won't, but
No, and as for the playoff aspirations, like I will tell you this too. I wrote about it on Tuesday, I think it was last week. I don't know, the days all blend together when you're in sunny California. I have spoken with people in the organization who have made it very clear that Kyle Dubas is going to be very aggressive at the deadline, and not in a way of bringing in players, in a way of sending out players. Like we know Marcus Pettersson's going to get traded. I don't think he's the only one. They're really going to be aggressive sellers at the deadline. That's not going to help them reach the postseason. Although it might not hurt as much as you think, because they are going to bring some kids up from Wilkes-Barre, and there are some kids down there who might be ready to help the Penguins. So that's an encouraging thing. But it's an interesting time for the Penguins, because they were right there 10 days ago, right there in a playoff spot. And I applaud them for sending Jarry down to Wilkes-Barre. I think it's the right move. But I also think they frankly let him play way too much this season. He cost them so many games. When you already are in a rebuilding process, when you don't have a great roster, you can't have a goaltender cost you games the way Tristan Jarry has, especially at the money he makes. I don't want to say it single-handedly destroyed the season, as there's a lot of issues with this team. Man, he sure didn't help.
I agree with that 1,000%, Josh. I want to throw something by you right now. Do you sell Bunting high?
It's funny. I hadn't really thought about his name, but I'd be okay with having the conversation. I mean, who on this team's untouchable? Sid? I mean, really? I don't know if anyone else is. Sure, I would consider it, even though I really like how he's played. And I know Kyle Dubas loves him. They've been together, Sault Ste. Marie to Toronto to Pittsburgh. But yeah, I'd consider it. Sure, I would. And I think the most interesting names at the deadline for the Penguins, like, we know Marcus is gone. I have heard a lot of teams like Drew O'Connor more than you might think. Like, I think there's a really good chance he goes. They see that size and the speed and the potential, and I think teams are intrigued by him. The interesting names might be Rickard Rakell, who I don't think they want to trade right now, and I don't think they feel in a rush to trade him. But his value is obviously extremely high. You could get something for him. And I still keep going back to what a lot of people think is an untradeable player. I wonder if Kyle Dubas went to Chris Letang and said, "Hey, Chris, would you be willing to play elsewhere?" I wonder what Chris would say. I'm not positive he would say, "Nah, you're not allowed to trade me." And Sid and Gino, I don't think they would ever play anywhere else. I don't necessarily feel that way about Chris. I don't know what the interest is in him around the league. But it's just a name to keep in mind. It wouldn't totally stun me if there were Chris Letang news in the next month.
You had me scared. I thought you were going to say Rusty.
No, I don't think so. I think he's the one they'll keep. I really do.
On
the sweater.
I think too. I just think Raquel is sticking till the summer.
I do too.
I think then you have 31 teams that are possible trade destination. Well, 30. They're not going to Philly. And then you have that, as well as then you can find someone to keep Sid happy. I think breaking up that line now would just shatter the cap.
Well, yeah, and there's no.
I mean, Josh, the fact they haven't done it yet to help Gino, the fact that they're willing to be a one-line team.
Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. There's no pressure on them to trade Raquel. He still has, a couple of years left on his deal after this one. And obviously, his value is still going to be high in the summer, just like it is now. And in fact, it might be even higher, as we've discussed. The cap's probably going way up. So teams will be more likely to bring on a contract, which isn't a bad contract anyway. But these are things to keep in mind. And I just keep hearing from people in the organization, like, Dubas knows his team's no good. He's going to sell the hell out of this roster if he can. So it's going to be really interesting when the deadline comes on March 7th. And I would also keep in mind, a lot of people think there could be a flurry of trades before the Four Nations tournament as well, kind of like a soft trade deadline, if you will, at the beginning of February. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Well, the other man that I think Hayes has maybe upped his value to maybe like a 6th round, 5th round, some team just picking him up,
And you would do that in a heartbeat, right?
Absolutely. Because I say this every week. I just don't think at $5 million a year that Raquel. I think we could keep him for 2 more years, and I would not. I think it'd be great, because I think as soon as we lose him, You'll be looking for a guy like him, and he'll cost $7 million.
That's right. That's the problem. You're
by
going
the
to
time we get
overpay
him
on
back.
July 1st. Yeah.
But I mean, Glass. Oh, they were making a big deal. Oh, he's looked good the last 2 games. Who cares? Tomasino. I think I like to keep Tomasino around.
Mhm.
I like Drew O'Connor. I don't know. I wish he got. I wish he got picked on as a kid and came out angry. I don't know.
Yeah.
He seemed like he had a nice childhood because he seems a little too nice.
He is too nice. Yes.
Yeah, but I like him as a player. But he can go. I mean, basically, other than Sid and Gino, and Rusty, they can all go.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think trading Raquel would be a bad business decision. I think he's a good hockey player,
unless a team really overpaid. Now,
Right.
so if there's a team wants to give you a first round pick and their best prospect for him, or so, well, that's different.
Right.
But no, I tend to agree with you. And who knows? Like, every name is in play. Like, I had assumed all along that Erik Karlsson makes so much money that there's not a team out there that would look into him, and I still think that.
Yeah.
But he has been better the last couple of months. So, if somebody wanted to talk about him, well, yeah, sure, I'd certainly be willing to listen if I were the Penguins. Yeah, so it's a really interesting time for Dubas, and it might be one of these situations where he wants to make so many deals, and because of that, you can't always wait until trade deadline day. Just logistically, it's hard to make 3 or 4 trades on deadline day. So I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if something happens.
Wouldn't you have to be blown away in a Karlsson trade? Only because I say it because of this. I would think they would want you to retain money, and I would not want to retain money on Karlsson. Like, I'd rather just have him play than have 5 million of them playing somewhere else and playing well.
No,
I don't know. I know your thoughts on that, guy. Like, Corey can answer too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to have 5 million. I don't want to be paying $5 million to have him tear it up in Calgary.
Yeah, that's my thought. Was I was going to actually ask, how much do you think we'd have to retain? Because nobody's going to want to take his money. It would have to be a really good, turn. It would have to be a really good return to eat that money. Like I agree, Joe. Like, it's just let him play here. Like, whatever. Like, it's.
And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think the Penguins can retain salaries until this summer, because I think they're already doing it on so many people that they've reached their quota. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the case. I don't know if I could unload him off the payroll, I'd probably do it. I wouldn't need a whole lot of money in return, or a whole lot of value in return for him. He's not going to kill you next season if he's still on your team. It's just a bad contract. That's the problem for Dubas right now. And not all of it is his doing, but some of it is. There's a lot of bad contracts on this team. Graves, Jarry, Karlsson, just 3 off the top of my head. There's a couple of others that aren't great. So the cap going up next season helps, and that's important. But you're going to see Kyle try to get as many assets as he can in the time being. So it'll be a fun trade deadline, just because I think it's going to be a very busy one, and that's what the fans like to hear. But it's going to require some patience from Penguins fans, because the assets they get in return aren't necessarily going to help them win for a while. But then again, they're not really winning right now. So you have to look at it from Dubas' standpoint and realize that.
Well, now I know we have another 40 weeks to talk about this. But how close is Mirshev?
He's probably a couple of years, I would guess.
Okay, because I thought Joel, I thought he played pretty good against Washington. Yep. That's fine. I mean, Joel probably would probably still be in the playoff hunt if he was at the homestand.
Yep.
But that's 2020 vision looking backwards. I just want, because I don't want Ned next year here. Like, he needs to upgrade the goaltending from Ned. I like Ned. He's a funny guy. Fun stuff, but you can't be great one. You can't. I want more than one great game to and a clunker.
Well, and he's another one that could be traded before the deadline. Would not surprise me at all. The only thing there, he hasn't had a very good year, so I don't know how much interest there is in him.
Well, that's my question, Josh. Do we go back to Jarry if we trade Ned? I guess
no. I don't think so.
Okay, so then we get somebody coming back for Ned,
maybe.
But then who's worse than Ned? Like
There's this,
who's looking to say, hey, our backup really stinks. Let's go get Ned. I mean,
got the,
no offense to Ned, but
there's the Swedish kid and still in Wilkes-Barre right now. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's actually put up really good numbers. I think he's more likely to come up right now than Jarry would be. Like, I really don't think they want Jarry coming up. That's
okay.
That's been made pretty clear to me. So it's just awkward for everybody if that happens, and they think he needs to play right now. So I think you're going to see him play a lot in Wilkes-Barre. I see where you're coming from on that one, and I wonder just how much interest there is in Ned. I'm sure they'd be willing to talk business. He's another one though. He makes a good chunk of money for a guy who's been a below average backup this year. I mean, and I think in general he's a pretty good backup who's having an off season. But yeah, even though there's a lot of teams around the league who have major goaltending issues, I don't know how in demand he is.
Well, what's funny is I heard that they were keeping Jarry up because Wilkes-Barre was really hot. They didn't want to send him down there because they need the gate at Wilkes-Barre. Like, they're chasing the Hershey Bears, and they're in the second seed. They don't want Jarry going down there and blowing their seed. He just dismantled the whole organization. He'll ruin Wheeling's chances of a playoff spot if he goes down there.
Oh, it would be interesting to see him down in Wheeling.
Dollar beer night in Wheeling. It's going to get a little adventurous with the citizens down there.
God. Oh God. Yeah. Philip Larson.
Larson. Thank you. Yes.
So yeah,
Larson's been really good in Wilkes-Barre. His numbers, it's a fairly small sample size, former Red Wings draft pick, but he was in Sweden the last few years. Lights out in Wilkes-Barre though. I wouldn't be shocked if they would bring him up in that event.
Yeah. He's got a 230 goals against average, 930 save percentage. Like, it's
930 is good.
Yeah, it's
obviously, but I mean, no, because they play a little more wide open in the AHL. Like, a 230 is not like, it's like a 3-3,
right,
in the NHL.
Yeah. So, before I would be remiss. I mean, we've been just like crapping all over the goalies for 27 minutes, but that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the goalie goal. And ironically, I think this is hilarious. Like, Tristan Jarry gets put on waivers, and he's like, "Well, at least I'm the only Penguin goalie to ever score a goalie goal. That's what they'll remember me for." Bam! 24 hours later, Ned just takes him out. It's like it's like they Men in Blacked everybody about Tristan Jarry. It was just like, boom, he's out of our minds. But just a nice moment. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, Ned is one of the most well-liked guys in that locker room. He unbelievably well-liked, friendly guy. Everybody loves Ned. And I actually thought, the story of that game in Buffalo was his performance in net. Like, the Penguins didn't play well in Buffalo at all. They actually kind of relapsed and were giving up a lot of good looks, odd man rushes, and he just stood tall and really bailed them out all night long. Then he puts up a goal and an assist, which has never been done in NHL history by a goaltender. And you're right, I couldn't help but think of Jarry. We always talk about Flower, always trying to score goals all those years. It drove him nuts when Jarry actually managed to score a goal. It's like Flower was the first person I thought of. And now I'm like, Jesus, Jarry's been gone 24 hours. Now he's got to look at the box score and see goal score, Nedeljkovic, 1842 or whatever it was. That must hurt a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, it was a magical evening for Ned, no doubt about it. Maybe it will do something for his confidence. I would imagine he'll get the start in LA tonight. Who knows? Maybe he'll go on a hot streak. He's done it before. Boy, could the Penguins ever use it. But for a night anyway, that was quite a show he put on.
Yeah, I thought his play in that was remarkable. But I thought the fact that he had the assist too, which meant no one ever in the NHL has done that. I mean, his name is going to be in the record books for a long, 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 long time. And I think it might have appeared. I don't really remember it appearing on the game cast. I don't know if you guys were paying attention or if they knew in the press box, Josh, but it's one of those things where, like, no one knew about Mario really until like, the next day. I wonder if he could have gotten word to say, "Hey, Ned, you got to fight somebody. Like, you got to get the, from the bench, just like, hey, you got to get the Gordie Howe here." Like that.
Absolutely. No, I actually wasn't there. I didn't do the first two games of this trip, so I haven't seen that. I'm going to talk to him in a little bit here today, and I'm going to tell him, like, why the hell did you not drop the gloves? You must not have been thinking, because he's the kind of guy who actually would. If he knew that, he'd probably be like, oh yeah, this is great. So he already did something that's never been done before with the goal, the assist, and he gets the win. But to drop the gloves, that absolutely would have been a historical night. I don't know who would have been willing. Like, you want to find somebody, small on Buffalo's roster that wouldn't, mess you up too much. But no, I mean, listen, the Penguins were on top of it right away. They tweeted out, it was the Penguins' first time in NHL history that a goalie's had a goal and an assist, which kind of surprised me. But then you think about it, there have been so few goals scored. Maybe it shouldn't surprise you. What are the odds that a guy would have an assist on that night too?
Well, what's funny about that too, though, is probably the way the referees are such jagoffs. They'd probably give him like a double rough or something just to piss him off.
I actually had that thought. Whoever the ref was, like, no, I see what you're doing. That's a double minor for roughing. Yeah. Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah. No, it was a good moment for Ned, and it just. Do you guys remember? By the way, Flower came. He always tried for it, but he had one that was on target in Edmonton, closer to the 2009 Cup than the 15, 16, 17 years. I forget what year it was, but he had one, and the defenseman for the Oilers at their own blue line leapt up and caught it. And I remember thinking, like, God, I hope that's not Flowers' only one. It was still like 2010, 2011. I was like, he'll get there, and maybe he will. I mean, there's only 20 in the history of the NHL, so it's quite a feat by Mr. Nedeljkovic. And
I thought it was a hairy situation too. Look at the guy who was right in front of the net when he shot it out there.
Oh yeah, that took some guts. I mean, that did. I love it. Have you seen the picture of Sid?
Yeah.
Before the puck went in the net, he had a big grin on his face. That was a great picture of him. He knew it was in, of course. So
I will say this: I don't think it helped him against the Capitals. Now the Capitals are a much better team, but I think maybe they got a little too happy with themselves on Friday night because they came out. They usually never come out flat against the Capitals, and I mean the Capitals are better than them, but it's not like they're playing, the Red Wings of 2003. It's not you didn't have to walk in there defeated.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. That game felt over from the very beginning. Like they really did not show up at all. I have not liked the way they played the last two games really since the Jarry news. I didn't really like the feel of the locker room. The day of that news, they were kind of down in the dumps, kind of the way they were when Gensel was traded, and I haven't liked how they played since. Tough test tonight against your mistress team, the LA Kings. So I'm interested to see how the Penguins come out tonight, but I'd be a little concerned, I think.
Well, if you have DraftKings or any of the other ones, like Adrian Kempe will score tonight.
Oh, always. Always.
Who do you think starts for the Penguins? I mean, is Joel going to get the nod and be the leader in the clubhouse?
I think that's open for competition. I would assume Ned gets the start tonight. If you're Bloomquist, you play Saturday night cross country flight Sunday. I doubt you throw him right back into the lineup Monday, especially the way Ned played in Buffalo. My guess is Ned tonight, and I honestly think whoever plays better will get the bulk of the playing time. I don't think it's predetermined at all right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, that'll do it for the first segment. We'll come back on the second segment and do go up and down the NHL. But before we do that, Mr. Bill Neofis, the Reg Dunlap of insurance, who Joe, next time you're in Pittsburgh, you got to go because we went and had lunch with Bill. Great guy, great hockey talk. And Joe, you'll appreciate. I think Josh and I could sit there and just listen to you two hark back to the old times, because I mean, has Mr. Neofis been a season ticket holder probably back whenever the old Joe line of the blue jerseys?
Pre-Mario for sure. I don't know what year I know he has some stories in the early 80s when nobody was at games. He said the refs could absolutely hear him from his seats in C12 or wherever he was sitting back then at the Igloo. So yeah, and it's funny when you talk with season ticket holders from those times. I love talking with them because they'll tell you there were 5,000 people in the building. Kids were playing street hockey in the concourses during games. Penguins are losing 8-2. Like, that's just the way it was, but those are the real fans.
There is a bond with those of us that were around pre-Mario. Now, I didn't go to very many games those days because they were still expensive for the Bartnick family.
Yeah, right. They always were expensive, but
and still a school night, but the ones we went to, just listening to every game, just
yeah.
just losing every game, watching every game.
That's right. But and when May 25th, 1991 came around and the Penguins won the cup, it meant the most to those fans who were with the Penguins in the 60s and 70s and the early 80s and saw all the losing. Those are my favorite Penguins fans because they are just so grateful for all the years of getting to see Mario and Sid and everything else. And Bill Neofus, our wonderful sponsor and our good friend, is certainly among that group. And thank you, Bill. He did take Corey and I out to lunch at Firebirds and Cranberry the other day. Always good hockey talk with Bill. Just your reminder, the Neofus Insurance Group, they are the best, the kings of Pittsburgh insurance. Doesn't matter what kind of insurance you need. I get my apartment insurance from them. Every kind of insurance you can imagine, they will take care of you. They have extended hours, by the way. I'm just looking at the latest message Bill sent. Fridays, 8:30 to 6 p.m. You can schedule a Saturday appointment as well. Nicest people in the world. They're located in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. So that's the Neofus Insurance Group. Give our friend Bill a call, 412-364-3388.
Hey, Bill, are you insuring Gino's Stanley Cup rings? Did you get that phone call?
Oh God!
Oh, you've been waiting for that one.
you gotta slide Gino his business card. Make sure it's
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that'll. We didn't even get to that in the segment. There's so much that happened that.
well, that is completely my wife's scream. You didn't look there. What do you mean you didn't look there? You knew they were there.
Oh yeah,
it's so funny. The other thing though that I'll just talk about real quickly about Bill, and I've never met this great man, but I hope to very soon. Is that's the bond that I think me and Bill have, and all the rest of us that were around pre-Mario. I think everyone who's after Mario, they love Mario.
Sure.
But Mario is our Messiah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, that's so we all take it a little more personally when he's not treated as such.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. And
we were the Clippers. No, we were the Clippers before.
Yeah. And that's what I encourage.
We're the Pirates.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the Penguins actually tried to win though, because they weren't spending a ton of money. But I remember through reading about the history, they were making deals. They were always trying to get people in here.
Oh yeah, no, trying to win. Oh yeah, always trying to win.
Trading all the first round picks just for average players to try to squeak into the playoffs and get that playoff gate.
Yeah, that's what it was all about back then. It was that playoff gate. But yeah. Anyway, so as we go around, I think we'll touch on them again, but we'll go up and down the league here. Josh, on your list of teams, you have the Caps number one on your up list because, good Lord, they're actually stretching out a lead on the President's Trophy. It's unbelievable. Nobody saw this coming.
No, I think they've won 4 in a row. They're clear of everybody by a handful of points in the East right now, Joe. And I don't watch the Caps play a ton. I obviously saw them play Saturday night. They are so good defensively. I mean, they are just in your face. The Penguins had hardly any looks all game. Rusty scores on the 2-on-1 with Sid. That was about it, though. I just find that they play a suffocating brand of defense, and I think they're a really well-coached team. I've been saying all along, I don't really think they're a contender, but I give them credit for what they're doing. Maybe they are a contender. I don't know. They're young in a lot of areas, but man, that team can play.
Carberry has them playing defense in their slot and in front of the net, like Jacques Lemaire in Game 6 of a playoff series.
I know.
I mean, every shot Carlson or Letang took, there was 9 guys standing in front of the net.
Oh yeah. That guy's coach of the year. I mean, there's no question.
Sure.
I mean, that debate's over.
Yeah.
I mean, I give them so much credit, and they found a way. Like Ovechkin is still scoring his goals. He's not going to always help you 5-on-5 all that much. He has some deficiencies at this stage of his career, but I think they kind of cover that up, and they're using him in a way where he can obviously still be extraordinarily helpful. But they can also win without him. We saw that when he was out of the lineup too. That they're just good. I mean, I see no weaknesses on that team at all. I'm very impressed. I don't know if they have the game breakers to win the whole thing. I don't know about that. But if you're going to give up as little as they give up defensively, you have a chance.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, and he's certainly on his way to beating Gretzky's record, which is long overdue. I'm looking forward to that. Next up, you got the Rangers. The Rangers are 6-1-3 in their last 10.
Here they come.
They're above the Penguins in the standings. So,
Joe, I thought they were left for dead, but obviously they're playing much better hockey all of a sudden. There's almost too much talent on that team to just completely write them off, I guess. Lots of, trade rumors swirling. We're still hearing JT Miller's name. That would be interesting. So the Rangers, I suspect they're still a mess on some level, but they're starting to play better. They've still got the goaltender. As long as they have him, they're still a dangerous team in an Eastern Conference. It's not any good.
I think that's the point. Is Igor, as much as I don't like him, he's incredible.
Oh.
I mean, he's incredible. So he's been saving their bacon when they played badly. When they turned 2025, they played better. Zibanejad's played better. Panarin has had a good year. I mean, he always scores. So and Trocheck's picked up a bit, and the defense is Miller's played better. I'm just not a Fox guy, but he's back team with Lindgren. They're a good hockey team. I never thought they were out of it because they were never bare, because the East has been so bad that no one ever, like the wild card 1 and 2 didn't go that far away from them. So they're totally back in the mix. And you can just see with Shesterkin, they could win 9 of 10, especially if they get JT Miller.
Yeah, well, that would make a difference.
How about JT Miller was going to be a healthy scratch for purposes of being traded? Doesn't get traded, gets 2 assists.
How about that? Yeah, things are getting interesting in Vancouver and New York. That's for sure.
Yep. The Senators are your third team on the up list, and they're the top wild card team at the moment. And I keep going back and I look at your guys' predictions for the summer, and nothing against you guys. I don't think anybody had the Senators in a wild card spot.
No, they just find a way. They tied a game, I think, with a few seconds left the other night. Is that against Boston? I think to send it to overtime. Then they won 6-5. I mean, they're doing some things. They do have a fairly high skill level, and they've just gotten hot in the last 6-8 weeks. Really, they didn't have a great start to the season, but it's one of those deals. Somebody in the all the mushy middle needs, somebody had to heat up a little bit. And it seems like it's them. Other teams, Detroit's suddenly alive. The Rangers are alive, but Ottawa's kind of an interesting team that they've got a scrappy element about them. And the thing about Ottawa, like they can just score. Like they kind of come at you in waves offensively, and they've had a lot of games this year where they'll throw up 6 or 7 goals. They can really light it up when they get hot. So I don't know. They're kind of fun to watch, Joe. They're a semi-interesting team in my opinion.
Yeah, it makes me sick. I do a poll in my Pro Hockey News column usually every 2 years or so of my 32 teams. My favorite to the least is obviously 1 and 2 or 1 and 2 forever, and 32 is 32 forever. But the Senators are always like in the 30s. I just hate the Senators. I always have. I mean, they got Giroux. They got Cousins. I can't stand that team. I just it makes me sick. I love Brady Tkachuk. I wish he'd been traded.
It's the only Canadian city. It's the only Canadian city where Crosby has ever heard booze, and I know this because I'm at almost every road game. And like in Western Canada, they treat him like the Beatles. In Montreal, they treat him like the Beatles. Toronto, it's always very polite applause. Ottawa hears booze a lot. It's a very strange fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Dean Everson fan, but I do feel bad for Columbus because of Johnny. And I love Steve Mears, and I like some of the guys on that team, and those big Russian kids are fun to watch. So Columbus is not the worst that can make. Ottawa would be the worst that could get in there for me. I want to see Detroit, and I want to see the Habs. That's what I really want to see. And the Habs have been on. Detroit's very much cooled off.
Yeah,
but the Habs are right there, and Wi-Fi tuning up Rempe was really nice. I said Remke didn't have the password for the NHL. He only has it for the AHL.
The Habs have never gone 4 years in a row missing the playoffs in their history, and this would be 4 years in a row. So it might just be their time to heat up and get in. Who knows?
Yep. The little kid, he's like 120 pounds soaking wet. That defenseman is insane good.
Oh yeah, no, I know. They've they've got some pieces. They don't have the high-end talent really, but it'll be interesting to see if they get a sniff of the postseason for sure.
Yeah.
I could go for Habs Leafs in the first round. That'd be pretty entertaining. The Leafs don't want that.
No, the Leafs will lose that 100%.
Historically speaking, yes.
Well, I still think COVID screwed over the Leafs in that series because I think there's no way they lose that series in Toronto.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, probably. The Devils are first on your down list. They're 2-5-3 in their last 10. I think they lost in overtime on Saturday. Just kind of middling here because they've been kind of floating into the down list a couple times.
Yeah, that's my that's been a team for a couple of years. I've been really, really high on them. I think they're a legitimate contender on paper. They've had a good season. Maybe they're just hitting the lull that a lot of teams hit at some point during the regular season. But I don't know what to make of them, Joe. I think they're legitimately good. Are they really a heavyweight in the Eastern Conference when the playoffs come? Don't know, but it's hard to like the way they're playing right at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're in that kind of blah, They kind of righted the ship after not playing so good at the beginning, or maybe there's a law. I don't know if their lull was in October or November, but they kind of were like, oh, maybe Markstrom's not, and then all of a sudden they're secure in the Metro, and I think they're just taking the foot off the gas a little bit. I mean, they're going to be a tough out. Everyone's a tough out in the playoffs except like Washington last year, but I mean, Markstrom can get hot. They have a big, solid defense and movable. I'll tell you, I watched the last couple minutes of the game on Saturday, and Luke, it's Luke Hughes, right? Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
He kept the puck in on the on the goalie pulled like 3 times, like a magician. Like he was on the Harlem. I'm like, he looked like his brother Quinn. It was amazing. Every time I thought, okay, it's over. He kept it in. He was dancing around guys. Yeah, I kind of like New Jersey to win the Metro, and
I like them on paper a lot. I mean, they're built to win in the playoffs. They're so good down the middle. They're an interesting team. Probably just in a little bit of a midseason funk. These are the dog days.
Yeah. Next up on your list down is Vancouver Canucks, and there's probably multiple reasons. I mean, they are only 3 wins in their last 10, but as much as McDavid can drive us nuts with his, it's the finals and just all his faux leadership. I don't know. He's not Sid, but he's phenomenal talent, obviously. But you can't tackle people and hold them down and then tackle them again. And this goes to my argument of why they should make penalties that go beyond regulation if you're losing. Because in that scenario, it's like, dude, like you're literally laying on top of him. Did he get suspended already?
I don't believe so as of yet. I suspect that he will. Listen, McDavid, you can't snap the way he did, and I get it. He's going to get suspended. And McDavid, you're right. He doesn't have the warm, likable personality like Sid does. He just doesn't. It's not him. But when I saw Garland just tackling McDavid and no penalties called during that entire stretch by Wes McCauley, I couldn't help but think of the stuff we've seen 87 and 66 deal with over the years.
Garage League.
Yeah, and I tweeted that yesterday, the Garage League video. I mean, that's what it made me think of. And do you know the numbers are incredible in terms of drawn penalties? McDavid is literally like 200th in the league for penalties drawn this season. That's insane. Like, I'm sorry, that guy should, he's indefensible most nights. I don't know if referees don't like him, what the deal is, but we speak of the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is the ultimate franchise that knows star players aren't protected very well over the course of NHL history. And to see that happen to McDavid the other night, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like how he's literally getting tackled for 15 seconds and you're just going to let it go. That really bothered me a little bit.
Well, we can all agree that McCauley is one of the biggest jagoffs as a referee. It's all about him. It's like he's terrible, and that it just is just terrible for the league. Yeah. And I'm not happy it happened to McDavid because I don't want him suspended. I want him to play every game. And imagine the people now they're going to go pay good money to watch now he's suspended, like for the next game. Like, you don't want him to have to be suspended because your referees can't make calls. Right. It's just once again, call and score the game. It's just bad refereeing, and it's just that whole Canadian BS.
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
And getting back to Corey's point, yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, Corey, no one in America picked Ottawa to make the playoffs, but half the people in Canada did. They've been waiting a decade for this shit.
Yeah.
All you ever hear about is how talented they are. They never do a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
And seriously, it's like they're always a team's going to knock out Boston or they never are.
No,
They still are. They're in the wild card.
that is
Take
true.
it easy, Ottawa.
And now we'll wrap up the down list with the Pens. The Pens are on the down list.
I didn't think we were allowed to pick the Penguins.
We'll change the rules.
Yeah.
I had to put them there because I don't like what I'm seeing right now, and I put them there with a purpose, just to get everybody's attention. I broke the rules for once because
It's your show.
well, there's that, but they've got their issues. I just don't like how this team feels all of a sudden, and I really think significant trades could be coming sooner rather than later. But they've also fooled us all season numerous times. Go out and beat LA tonight, and then hey, that would make a little bit of a statement. It's right there for them if they want it.
Well, what's interesting, and you said how you didn't like the way the locker room felt after the Jarry news. I wonder if they thought, well, Jesus, they just could have done that a week and a half ago, and we'd have 5 more points.
Maybe,
like you waited to trade, they waited to dump them now.
Maybe no, because it's hockey players are wired to never blame the goaltender under any circumstances, but these guys aren't stupid. They know what's been going on behind them all season. Of course, they know.
Yeah, it's not good in Penguin land. Now I'll go into Joe's list on players. We got Thomas Hertl with the Golden Knights. 4 goals in his last 5 games. And to be completely honest, he's one of those names that I always forget still plays. Like, I feel like he's been around forever, doesn't he?
Well, at the beginning of the year, everyone forgot, including the guys on the Vegas Golden Knights forgot he was there. That's why he's on the list. But now he's been dominating like he should. And when he gets going, I mean, now Vegas is a true Stanley Cup contender because they're a 2-line team.
Yeah, they do everything else well already. That guy's a good player. You give them that kind of scoring depth, they could absolutely win the whole thing, Joe. And he could certainly be a part of it.
Yeah, he was Yager Jr. when he first came up.
Oh, I remember when I first saw him play, like, whoa, he just one of those guys that wowed you with some of the stuff he could do. And he can still play.
Yeah. And this is a guy who hasn't made it to this side of the list yet. It would be Mr. Steven Stamkos. 4 goals in his last 3 games. So he's gotten off of Joe's down list and made it to the uppers.
Yeah, I just love Stamkos, and he's been lighting it up under terrible circumstances. It's like
one of my favorite people in the sport. Really wonderful human being. I hate that he had to leave, though. That's one of those guys should have just been with one franchise his whole career. He does not look right in those ugly Predators uniforms at all.
They're ugly. Ugly.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if do you guys do the whole, like there's 9 boxes, and it's like, okay, it's like tic-tac-toe, or not tic-tac-toe, whatever it is. There's like 9 boxes, and it's like, okay, to be the Canadians up here, and then the Capitals here, and you got to pick a player that played for the Canadians and the Capitals. Yeah. It's like, I can never tell the difference between Buffalo and Nashville. I got to put my glasses on, and I still guess. And half the time I'm wrong. I'm like, there's no way that Jack Eichel didn't play for Vegas, and then it's the Predator emblem. Damn it.
Especially when they had that like late 2000s blue, like the blue weird Buffalo Sabre uniform.
Yeah, the Michael Pekka version.
Yeah, that was bad. So we got next up on your list, Joe, is them taking a stab here, because I actually didn't even get to look up what his pronunciation was. I was too busy looking at his stats. But Montreal's young goaltender, Jakob Dobes.
It's like Dubois or something, or Dubish, something like that.
He's played 5 games, 5 wins. So look out, Patrick Aleem. 1 shutout, 155 goals against average, and a 940 save percentage. So, whoa.
He's been incredible, and he was incredible in the overtime I watched, I think, on Friday night. He was incredible. I'm like, this guy, I got to put him on my list. And I'm like, don't lose before we come out. I got to find somebody new. And then they played their other goaltender who got just destroyed. They were up 3-0, and then Toronto kicked the touchdown, kicked the extra point.
Yeah. Well, if ever there's been a franchise in hockey history that knows how to come upon young goaltenders, it would be the Montreal Canadiens. So maybe they've got something in him. I don't know, but yeah, the numbers speak for themselves in that one.
He's only 23, so maybe they've got one. Who knows? Going down now, we've got the New York Islanders, Mr. J.G. Pageau, which in the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, I thought this is going to be a guy that's going to be around. Like, he's going to be a nuisance and he's going to kill you. I haven't really heard anything from him since then, and not looking good this year, huh, Joe?
No, I mean, he got the John Blutowski, I think, 0.0 in the last 5 or 10 games. It's about this time of year I start looking at the teams that aren't doing anything and who are people are going to be looking at to pick off the roster. And I thought, oh, Pageau, but man, is he injured? I haven't even seen any highlights from him. He's got nothing going on.
The only thing about him, he was never a great skater, and the game, I know we say this all the time, it's gotten so much faster, even since 2017. And yeah, you're right. I mean, he was a guy in Ottawa, man. I think he had a 4-goal playoff game once, and he would absolutely get your attention. He was so good defensively, but he has struggled. And the Islanders in general, man, they have really taken a tumble. The Islanders for years always end up with about 10 more points than you expect them to get before every season, because on paper they're never very good. But now they're not very good on paper, and they're just not very good, period. That's been a real struggle for them.
Good old Patty Waugh having his struggles on the island.
A lot of people think he's a really good coach. There's so many people around the league have told me, this guy, he might be a little nuts, but he's a great coach. But he's not having a lot of success there.
No, that they have some talent, but it's old.
Yeah. We know what that's like.
Yeah. Barzal, Barzal has not played good. Horvat has not lived up to that contract.
No, not at all.
Next up, you got Marty Nashis down in Carolina, which I think we were all pretty high on last year, and 1 goal in his last 5. So, but is there more going on there, Joe? I mean, just not seeing a lot of highlights from him.
No, because beginning of the year, oh my God, that's why they didn't want to pay Jake. Nashis' coming out party. It's a Marty Nashis show, and then he does what he always does. He disappears. He goes away.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys. When he's good, you think he's going to be a star. He just has. I've seen him in person, especially. He just jumps out at you sometimes. He can be a dominant player, but you're right. Then he just disappears for a while. I don't know what the deal is with him. But I do know that he should be more productive, really, most seasons. I think with the physical talent that he has, he should be more productive than he's been, no doubt.
Yeah. And number 3 on your list is Florida's Sam Bennett, which I had to go back and look really deep to see, because I don't think I have seen his name come across the box score in a while. And so he had 13 goals in his first 25 games, and we were like, holy crap, he's unbelievable. 0. He still has 13 goals and 0 goals in his last 19. Wow. 19 games without a goal.
Yeah, I'm chalking this up to he knows he got off to a nice start here. Maybe he's hearing the trade rumors a little bit, because somehow he was not on the block, but people were talking about how Florida might not retain him, which I think is crazy, because he's one of the top 5 guys you want come April and May. Yeah. So I think he's just resting his bones to go for a 3 final appearance for 3 years in a row.
I'll go back to a conversation I had with Patrick Hornquist before the season. I was down in Florida in September, and I said, all right, Horny, you were on a team that tried to win 3 in a row. And now this team is going to try to go back to the finals 3 years in a row, at least. So you know what that road is like. And he told me, he said, we got to get off to a hot start. I said, why? He said, because in the middle of the season, we're going to hit a lull. We're going to get tired for a while. We're going to play like shit for a while. We got to get up to a good start, give ourselves a little bit of a cushion. And I think that's happened with that team in general. And maybe Bennett is one of those guys that it's happened to. But you're right. I think he'll be fine. And I want him on my side when the playoffs roll around, because if he's not scoring goals, he's just going to beat the hell out of everybody. He's going to find a way to win anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That'll do it for the up and downs. I mean, I'm just Sam Bennett. I feel bad He was on fire. He was on pace for like 45.
Oh, congratulations! He's made each side of the list this year.
I need to
He
go
and
back
Sam are
through
both.
and like try and like see who makes both sides of the list.
Yeah.
But we'll come back on the third segment. I've got one big question for both of you guys. It's one for both of you, but we'll talk about that on the third segment of Two for Talking. Welcome back to the third segment of Two for Talking. And so my big question for you guys, and Pierre Maguire does his weekly hit on Madden. And I heard him talk about this, and it's something that has always irked me. But he talked about analytics. So in general, I want to get your guys' view on analytics. But Pierre went a little further, and he talked about how he thinks, teams like the Rangers and some other teams, that he thinks that going all in on the analytics has actually hurt them and is starting to show that. And he kind of even further back, he said, there's no team that went big on analytics and ever won anything. I think analytics make sense for baseball, where you're like, hey, this guy hits the ball 70% of the time to the shortstop hole, so let's shift that way. Like, that makes sense. Hockey, come on, like the Corsi, I was never a big believer in that stuff. So I wanted to hear you guys. I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on analytics and in general.
Well, I have one question before we answer this question. I don't even know what Corsi means.
I think we know where Joe's going then.
No, but I honestly, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I think some advanced stats make sense. I think, some stats don't make sense. Like the plus minus is like, skewed for like Sid and Rusty are always on the ice for when they get, when the goalie pulled. So they always get a minus. Not always. Sometimes they score, but usually it's a minus. So they have like a minus 10 already when you start out. I don't know. I think there is a famous quote. There are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. I think analytics always tends to find a 5'10" guy that can scoot around the ice and pick up secondary assists or has good zone time. I want a 6'2" bone cruncher is going to stand in front of the net.
Yeah.
When they have an analytic for how much balls somebody has, like I'm sure Sam Bennett isn't head, or Patrick Hornquist wasn't like the gleam of every guy with glasses analytics eye, but I'll take Horny, I'll take Bennett, I'll take Milan Lucic. Those are the guys I want on my team.
Yeah, I have never been a particular fan of analytics, and I think they are useful in small doses. I think they can help you locate good players on bad teams, or maybe bottom six kind of guys who can actually help a good team that otherwise may go overlooked, things of that nature. Serious hockey people that I've talked with, like, they don't base a whole lot on analytics. Yes, it's part of the equation, but it's not everything. And I think there's always been a perception of Kyle Dubas that he's this huge analytics guy. I don't know if it's because the language he speaks with, or the glasses that he wears, or what it is.
Glasses.
His first press conference in Pittsburgh, one of the first questions at the press conference, I asked him about analytics and his thought on, what advancements he might make to the Penguins analytics staff. And he got pretty defensive. And he said, a lot of people think I'm an analytics guy. I grew up in the locker room in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm a hockey junkie. And I believe that. And if you look at how he builds his teams, I don't think he pays that much attention to analytics. So there's a place for them. But I think in general, analytics are bad for sports. I think they make things a little more sterile, a little more boring. Baseball, it's out of control. And I understand why it's used more in baseball, but I just, there's a place for it. But those who think analytics are everything in hockey, I'm sorry. That has very much proven to not be the case time and time again.
Yes. It's funny because they, I think Seattle's been a big analytics team, right? Because they're in Seattle and, they're woke. And I just came out recently,
Arena, right?
Yeah, it just came out recently that, Disco Dan was not the number one choice of Ronnie Francis, that it was Todd McClellan.
Saw that, yeah.
But people in the organization wanted Disco Dan because, I think because he had a woman as an assistant coach, because they'd rather be woke than win a Stanley Cup up there in Seattle, which is working out nicely for them. I'm afraid Ronnie's going to take the fall probably for this nonsense.
That
But
team's
yeah,
good.
well, I think one thing I do like about analytics is I think when you're rating goaltenders, I think that's where it makes more sense. Where this guy faces this many slot shots, and how many real chances does this guy face, and or where does he give up? Okay, like we all know, that Murray had a bad glove. We all know Jarry is, I think finding weak spots in goaltenders is good for the analytics. But in general, I'm really good at the eye test. And there's many, many guys that I've said, this guy's going to be somebody. And he ends up being somebody. And I wish the Penguins would get him. And then they end up signing 5-year contracts somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I've never read an analytics sheet in my life.
And maybe it's the sports writer in me, but I find analytic talk just boring in general. Not this conversation, but I mean, a lot of people just want to not even write an article after a game. Now, here's the chart of okay. I don't need Corsi's numbers to know that, when prime Chris Letang was on the ice, the Penguins had the puck a lot. Like, yeah, no shit. Like I'm aware. So you can learn some things. You can advance your understanding of certain facets of players in the game, but to me, it's just a small part of the game, and it gets overblown by certain people. And I have also found that, fans, that there's a percentage of fans who really get into the analytics stuff, but it's a very vocal minority. Most people don't care, and most people just can watch the game and say, "Hey, that guy's a good hockey player. I want him on my team." It can be almost that simple.
I will say this about Pierre Maguire, though. The less he talks, the more I agree with him. We used to have a segment on Puck Off called Shut the F Up, Pierre. Like how many times you watch a game and you have to yell out, "Shut the F up, Pierre."
Listen, Pierre will never be a guest on this podcast.
Whatever. I mean, I make friends with everybody. I just, he's not annoying me because he's not blowing Claude Giroux. And he's not calling Letang Christopher like Adrius Lacerva.
Joe Bartnick from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Used to work at the Clark Bar in 1991.
What's really funny is there were like 5. What game was the EJ Raddick tried to? It was like 5 seconds left, and the goalie was pulled. And in New Jersey game, he threw in where the kid grew up. Like it was like I was going over the blue line. He goes, so and so. From whatever town he was from in America. I'm like, well, little Pierre Maguire threw 5 seconds left. Tell me what town the kid grew up in.
Yeah. It always a little irked me. It irked me a little bit, but like when he'd say like Mario Lemieux, like as if he was like born up in like Montreal or something like
Villemard. Oh yes.
You got to hit the accents, and I'm like, dude, I'm a Yinzer no matter where I go. Like, so, but yeah, I don't know. I thought that was I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. I know, Josh, you probably have some colleagues that write stuff, and I find nothing.
I don't, and it's funny. Like some of my colleagues who write the analytics stuff, like a lot of people read it. It's very well done. It's just not for me, and I just
I suspect it's not for most of the NHL as well.
It's not, and if you do look at the cup-winning teams over the years, very seldom do teams that are heavy into analytics do all that great in the playoffs. So there's something to be said for just building a hockey team in an intelligent way. And if you have the analytics would have you build like nothing, but you're right, Joe, a small skilled team, 1 through 18. And guess what that's going to do in the playoffs? Like you have to have some balance. It's just the way it is. So yeah. And the analytics, even in October and November, said Erik Karlsson was playing great hockey. So what does that tell you? I mean, really?
That says, I will say this. I think his name is, the guy on the NHL Network that does all the analytics. He makes it interesting. I will say that he's a good. Sometimes he's in studio on the wrap up show on the fly. I think his first name's Mike, blonde hair, tall guy. I think he does a pretty good job because he makes you like he shows you what's wrong with this team.
Yeah, and some do. Like I've worked with Jesse Marshall for years, and Jesse does a great job of breaking stuff down. A lot of the analytics people are just kind of snooty by nature and kind of look down on you. Well, my chart says this, so you're obviously wrong. Like, okay, like I've been watching.
No, Jesse doesn't need me to toot his horn, but no, his articles are very insightful. And I don't even know how he can come up with all this shit that he does.
Unbelievable. The guy's got a
we just get a guy like in one day. It's like everything you wanted to know about the guy.
I can
Or-
mention any prospect in the hockey world, and Jesse will give me the full breakdown immediately. Like, what the hell, man? You got a wife and a kid, you got cats. Like, you're a very busy guy. Like, how do you know all this? But that's why he's Jesse Marshall and we're not.
Yeah.
So, well, that'll do it for us on Two for Talking. Hopefully we get a win. Go Pens tonight. And if you guys want to reach out to the show, Two for Talking or contact at twofortalking.com. But we appreciate all of you, and we will talk to you guys next week.